All right, live and direct. It's been a minute since I went live, and consistency is the theme of the day. Consistency, you got to show up. A big key to success in life in general, in a career. It's been a big key to my success in my career is showing up. When you're tired, showing up, when you don't feel like it, showing up. And when folks are doing something different and you have a plan that you are trying to implement, not that you're trying to implement, that you're actually implementing, you have to show up. And so that's what we're doing today. And so, I've been on the low. I've been working hard, and the firm has been getting phenomenal results. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of my team. And, sometimes you got to pop out and show folks. I'll get to that in a little bit if you get the reference. But, we just had a situation where a client was facing 365 days in jail. And this was a legit 365. It wasn't one of those, because sometimes, when you're facing, let's say, 15 years in jail, but the case might really only be worth 4 or 5 years. Like, nah, this was something where the judge said, hey, if I see you in my courtroom again, I'm going to give you 365 days. And he was in a jam, right? He actually, he had a kid on the way. He had a good job good job opportunity. And he was facing that 365. We were able to come in, step in, and get him out of the situation. He was actually out after a week. And so, I had sent a Slack message. That's our internal chat with the firm, and just talking about the generational impact that we have and how important that is, right? If you have a child on the way, you have a child that you're responsible for, and you're in custody, you're not able to provide for that child, you lost your job, or you're losing on a real good job prospect for being in custody, then that can throw a lot of generations to come for a loop. And so it is something that I'm very proud of in terms of the work that we do every day as a criminal defense firm. And that's something that I want to suggest is, finding fulfillment in your work, finding fulfillment in what you do. And if you don't do something that is fulfillment, or if you don't do something that's fulfilling now, then get into something that you do, because it is really difficult to truly appreciate life when you're doing something, because, we spend so much time at work, right? Whether you work 40 hours a week, 50, 60, 70, what have you, we just give way too much of our lives to not find fulfillment in our work. And listen, if you can't find fulfillment in your work, then maybe you can find it outside of work, and that can be in whatever it is that you do. I know, my man Gerald is a youth football coach, and I see the passion. I love it. I love seeing folks doing what they love and giving their gifts and sharing it with others. My man Chris is a pastor. I see the passion there. I just love that. And I know that he's being fulfilled by, turning hearts to God and helping them, have a relationship with Christ. And that is a beautiful thing. And, we're just all collectively doing important things as a society. And that's where we can really derive super fulfillment. And, as I'm making my comeback here, doing the live streams and putting information out, and this is, it's a lesson for my entrepreneurs. If you have a business and if you're doing excellent work, or you do amazing work, then you do have a duty to get your message out there to the masses so that they can connect with you, so they have a way to find you. And so this is me, living out the lesson that I'm telling you right now by doing this. And so, as I continue forward and being consistent, right, we're going to be talking about the law, but we're also going to be talking about just life lessons, because I've been very blessed to have some amazing people in my life putting me up on game. As you can see, the books behind me, I read a lot. And so I have, there's a lot that I don't know in life, but there's a lot that I do know. And, I'm just here to provide some of those lessons, because I understand that most of the people that consume my content will never get in trouble. And I hope that is the case. I hope that you never get into any sort of type of jam. But I always tell folks, hey, it's not going to be you. It might be somebody that that ends up getting arrested, or they might be facing criminal charges or under investigation. And you have somebody that you can send them to. But it's just really important aside from that, right, to also be able to drop those gems. Again, so many people have been so gracious with their knowledge and their guidance and their wisdom. I just want to be able to pass that along, because you can go through things in life, and trial and error is a very inefficient way to learn how to do something, right? The more efficient way is to talk to somebody who's 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and they can tell you where the pitfalls are, right? They can tell you where the pitfalls in the road are. And maybe in a 5, 10, 15-minute conversation, you might be able to cut many years off of that learning curve. And, that's one of the things that I do with the books, right? Because where else would you have an opportunity to sit down and listen to a Mike Tyson, a Tony Robbins, a Russell Brunson, a Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, any of these people who are at the top of their game in what they do, right? And you get a chance to look at either through a book or even an audiobook. I really love audiobooks, and really just hear some of the gems that they have that, folks pass to them and that they're passing on to you. So, just something, to keep into consideration. And again, something that I plan on doing to be able to pass along some of those life lessons, because I'm always seeking advice from people. I always want to, use what people know to make myself a better person. But, I just recently turned 44. It's the 29th. So my birthday was on the 9th. And so I just really want to, as I'm on here right now, take the time to thank every single one of you who wished me a happy birthday. I haven't responded to everyone on social media, but I really do appreciate it sincerely. I just haven't really been on social media lately because honestly, it's a distraction. I have goals and things that I really want to focus on in life. And social media, it could be a big time waste. You ever been on social media? You might just be waiting in line, or you might be sitting on the toilet or whatever, and you pick up the phone because you're bored. And next thing you know, 45 minutes has gone by and you're just scrolling aimlessly. That's a lot of time. We can really spend a lot of time on social media just wasting time, and that's not really a good thing. Try being actually bored sometime. That might be something new. Have you ever just sat down and sat in your own thoughts, right? There's so many distractions. What if you took the time to just really sit in your own thoughts? You never know. There might be something in terms of a big thing in life that you need to change, or something that you might be able to take stock of and be appreciative of that, but you haven't really taken that time because there's just so many distractions around. And so I know that I'm saying that on social media, but again, we're talking about, I need to be on here and being in touch and in contact with the community and promoting my business, promoting my brand and the like. But yeah, my focus lately, right, has been on my family, getting right in my career and continue to progress in my career. But first and foremost, for me personally, is getting my relationship with God right. And I know that's not for everybody, and that's cool. If it's not if that doesn't vibe with you, then that's your thing. But for me, it's very important to have my relationship right with God, and that's been a major focus for me. But I'm going to be reaching out. If you haven't seen me in a while, East Weston, what's good? What business for me? Kersey Law is my business, if that's what you're asking. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I'm in San Diego, California. We run a criminal defense firm, and that's what we do. So if you haven't heard from me in a while, you might get a text, you might get a phone call. I might ask you to meet up. Let's grab some tea or some coffee or lunch or something like that, because we got to get connected. Listen, at 44, I'm realizing, life is quite short. Unfortunately, I have lost quite a few folks that are close to me. And given that life is short, we really do have to make sure that we stay connected. If there's that person that you haven't spoken to in a while, that person that you're like, man, I need to give him a call, like, do that before it's too late. I've personally lived that lesson out way too many times, and I want to make sure that I'm not making that mistake much more. And so, if I pop up on you, say what's up. And so, yes, it's really all about the little things for me. And I realize that the little things actually are the big things, right? I personally have struggled over the years with appreciating things, appreciating people, being grateful for all the people and things that I have in my life. And that's something I'm trying to get better at, right? And so, starting, in that light, I want to just really take the time to thank everyone who has supported me, supported my business on this journey. Kersey Law, we've been at it since 2010. So that's about 14 years. That's a while. That's a while. It is not lost on me that, they say 85% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. And then of that 15% that survives, another 85% drops off. And so, being in year 15, that means a lot to be here. And we can't be here without the support of the community. So I'm definitely appreciative of that. And so one thing I want to share with you is my boy Nathan, he shared with me that we should be trying to do one thing each year that just really moves the needle. What's that one thing? And I realized like last year, that one thing for me was getting really intimately familiar with numbers. If you're a business owner, if you know a business owner, you should encourage them, get to know your numbers better, right? Get to know, how many clients you have every month. Get to know what your expenses are, get to know what your revenue is, get to know how much it costs for you to acquire a client, all these numbers. And I find like most service providers, whether a professional or otherwise, a lot of times we're good at the trade that we do, but we may not be as intimately familiar with business principles because we learned how to do a thing, right? We didn't, if you're a baker, you learned how to bake an amazing cake, right? If you're a plumber, you know how to snake a toilet with the best of them. If you're a lawyer, you know how to practice law, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you understand the business of doing that thing. And so it can be a little scary, right? Because it's scary to go into the uncharted territory, right? It can be scary to learn something new. It can be scary to not necessarily be good at something. But I would say, that could be a place where you challenge yourself to be better. And so that's what my thing was last year. I got very intimately familiar with numbers in a way that I hadn't. And so I appreciate you, Alejandro. We do we do offer financing. We make our services affordable at just a few $100s a month. And you can reach out to learn more about our budget-friendly solutions. There's a little commercial that I wasn't even expecting to have in there. I appreciate you making that comment, Alejandro. And so for this year, the one thing that will move the needle is truly getting my fitness right on a deeper level. At 44, I am conscious of the fact I'm at that middle age point, right? And if I haven't told you, I've got a little son. And so, or if you didn't know, yeah, I have a little son. And it's important for me. I want to be able to thrive. I want to be able to, be in his life in a healthy way as long as I can. And so I've decided that, I was really going to hone in on my diet and, start tracking my calories and my macros and all of that kind of stuff. And, it's just really important. And I'm like Big Pun, I want to live. Remember he said that, I want to live. And I also realized that while 44 years old is a bit up there in age, it's also very young. It's very young, and I have so many folks that are a few years ahead of me, whether that's 10, 20 years ahead of me, and still looking amazing, feeling amazing. And so just thriving and not surviving throughout life, but actually thriving. And I think that's really important. That should be something that is part of our goals to do, is to not just survive through life, but actually thrive. And so, yeah, getting my fitness right. I just got a digital scale, right? So I want to start weighing my food. I want to know, exactly how much food I'm putting in my body. newsflash, we as Americans, we overconsume. We eat too much. We eat too much, and we eat too much of the wrong thing. So I want to make sure that I'm eating what I need and not eating too much, and making sure that I'm focused on the right things. And so that's what I'm getting dialed in. And as I've, already made that start, I feel good. I'm full of vitality, and I'm happy. But speaking of, I said earlier, sometimes you got to pop out and show folks. I really need to see Kendrick Lamar's live stream. I just heard, that he had that concert, and I heard it was amazing. I heard it went crazy. And the thing that I want to talk about, I might get to that at some later point, but I want to talk about the vindication of J. Cole, right? The reason why I want to talk about this is because in my line of work, a lot of times people end up calling my line because they've made a bad decision, because they made a decision that a lot of times they regret after the fact. And that could be that they were egged on by people that were a bad influence in their life, or they allowed their buttons to get pushed in a way, or they decided that they were going to get money by a way that was illegal means. And it turned out that all the time that they ended up losing while being in custody, when they balanced everything out, they might have been making minimum wage or less than minimum wage. And so when we talk about bad decisions, for J. Cole, he had an opportunity to make a bad decision, right? When it came to that beef, and when he dropped his track, you could see, man, like if you listen to that track that's been, taken down, like his heart wasn't really in it. That wasn't something that he really wanted to do. But, what we were not privy to, which which then came out after the fact, was that, he was told, listen, like, that's cool that you wanted to do this competitive thing, but this is not that, right? What you're trying to do is not that. And he ended up bowing out, right? And that caused a lot of folks, and probably you, if you're watching this, maybe that caused you to say, oh, he's a punk, or that's whack. How you gonna, apologize? This is rap beef and all of that. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is because you have to think about how brave it was to make that decision, to actually make the apology. So to me, I almost think that is, being a bigger man, to own up to, hey, listen, this is something that was, I didn't want to do this. My heart wasn't in this. I'm bowing out. And, he didn't know, or we didn't know, right? We didn't know as fans that, he was going to turn out to have been the genius in this whole situation. Because once you saw what happened after the fact, you're like, okay, man, now he's able to chill. J. Cole's out here living life. He's on the beach. He's at the park chilling, right? All the memes and stuff that was going around. But I just think, so much to life and living a good life, it comes down to the decisions that you make. And sometimes you just got to make the decision that's right for you, even if people around you don't understand that that's the right decision that you need to make. And so being able to, again, when I was talking about, sitting down in your thoughts and being able to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do for me, and not care about what everybody else around you might think about that decision, unless they're supporting you. If somebody's supporting you and they really want to show love and they really want to offer you advice that you value, then you can do that. But sometimes you do just have to sit down in your own thoughts and make that right decision for you. So we'll see if I'm able to get into that more later on. But let's get to what this live was supposed to be about, and that's about this YSL trial. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to this thing, but it's been said to be a circus. This thing is absolutely crazy. Young Thug's lawyer, his lead counsel, Brian Steele, was recently held in contempt, and the judge has actually threatened now other people with contempt. And this situation is just absolutely crazy. I don't know that I've seen another trial like this that has had so many fiasco moments, whether that was, drugs, like a legit hand-to-hand happening in the courtroom with some prescription pills. One of the jurors caught recording some of the proceedings and being held in contempt. And we have Brian Steele being held in contempt, and now the judge is trying to hold other folks in contempt, or at least threatening to do so. This has been crazy, not to mention just the length of trial, how long this has been going on. This has been on for, around a year and a half, if not more at this point. Even just picking the jury took almost a year, and it's been crazy. Listen, unless you're a trial lawyer, you have no idea the amount of just stress and time that goes into preparing for a trial and just being in trial. And so, a trial can be, if it's a month-long trial, a couple month-long trial, that can be like a marathon. But to be in trial for a year and a half is, it's crazy. It is crazy. And when you're actually in trial, it's you're on your A game. You're going at 100% for 6 hours in a day, right? Because you're usually going to go from 9 to 12, and then you'll go from 1:30 to 4:30, and you might have 10-15 minute break in during both those morning and afternoon sessions. But you're hanging on to every single word, because you might have to make an objection. You're making sure that when a witness is testifying, they're not lying, and you might need to catch them up on that. As criminal defense attorneys, we have to cross-examine witnesses, and so we need to be on point in catching every word of what they're saying. And sometimes you might have evidentiary issues that pop up. You might have witness issues that pop up. It's just chaotic. And the higher the stakes, right? And hey, you tell a passionate criminal defense attorney, they could be, their client could be facing 10 days in jail, and you're still going at it, right, very intensely and fighting for your client's rights. But there's just something different when your client is facing life in prison, in states where they have the death penalty. When your client might be facing the death penalty, there's just an added level of stress that goes along with that. So picture that, but then having a situation where now a judge is finding you in contempt and then threatening to throw you in jail and actually ordering you to go to jail. And you have Brian Steele's situation where, he just made himself the most gangster lawyer in America by, going down and basically saying, hey, Your Honor, if you're going to put me in jail, at least let me be in the cell with my client so we can build up our defense on the weekend. Man, when it comes to criminal defense attorneys, loyalty and reputation is everything. And that man, it's my understanding he already had a solid reputation in his community, but he just took it to another level with what he did here. But what we're talking about is just this secret meeting that happened in the middle of trial, right? And it sounds shady. Everybody's talking about it. There are so many people who are calling out the DA for yet another time, calling out the judge for yet another time. And it sounds shady, and it has people questioning, how does something like this happen? And I personally, I haven't been up on every single detail of this trial, but I pop in and out, just watching what's going on. It's a lot to catch up with, right? They're in session every single day from morning to the afternoon. And if you have your own client list, then, it's a lot to keep up with. But I was really curious just to hear what Lil Woody, Mr. Copeland's lawyer, would have to say about it, right? And because we were hearing this name, Kayla Bumpus, quite a few times, and she actually sat down for an interview. And I thought it to be kind of surprising because her case, right? So she's going to have an order to show cause hearing. She's going to be one of those parties that the judge is going to determine whether she's in contempt as well, right? For leaking the information about this conference that ended up happening. And so I was pretty surprised that she even sat down for an interview. She didn't really reveal a whole lot because the case was pending. But for me, When it comes to media, I tend to be a bit more conservative than other lawyers. I don't, I'm not a fan of making these, broad, detailed statements. I really like to keep it short. And if I were her attorney, because she now has her own attorney, she had to hire her own counsel to defend her in this order to show cause. I would have said, hey, no, I don't want you making any, giving any interviews. Now, at the end of the day, she is a lawyer, right? So she's a licensed attorney. She's a criminal defense attorney. She understands the risk, right, that can come along with going out and giving statements. But she decided to sit down for an interview. Wasn't very revealing because she said, hey, those are, things that I can't answer at this time because this is a pending case. But um, she was actually sitting in for attorney Melnick, right? And actually in her interview, she talked about how attorneys will oftentimes cover hearings for each other. And this is absolutely true. This happens all the time, right? So I just finished a trial. I was in trial. We had a start date of April 2nd, and we finished on about May 19th, right? And so during that time, while I'm in trial, I needed to have my hearings covered, right? So I have an associate, Michelle Boss. She's amazing. She was covering for me, so we're from the same firm, but, I have my cases and she has her cases. And sometimes, like, if we're in two different courthouses, right? If I'm in trial, I'll be like, hey, can you cover this readiness conference for me? Or if, like, we're both in two different conference or courthouses, right? We practice in San Diego. So I might be in Vista and she might be in South Bay. We might have a downtown case. And so I might ask a colleague, hey, you're going to be in downtown San Diego. Can you cover this matter for me? Right. And so that is not, that's not out of the ordinary at all. And in fact, even with public defenders' offices, sometimes, one public defender will stand in for another public defender. And it happens on the DA side as well, right? So you might have a deputy district attorney who's appearing on a matter, or they might be in trial, or they might be in a preliminary hearing, and another DA appears for them in another matter. So in the criminal defense world, or excuse me, in the criminal world, this is something that happens pretty often. But the thing is, that will usually happen on status conferences, right? So status conference where you're just showing up, you might be picking new dates, right? Letting the judge know where we're at with the case, or even an arraignment, right? The initial appearance where the person is being made aware of the charges, entering their not guilty pleas and getting their new dates. That might be something that you have another lawyer appear for you on. But what this situation is completely different, in my opinion, right? And I'm not one to, just throw another lawyer under the bus or second guess decisions. Hindsight is always 2020. But the reality is, in my opinion, the matter that Miss Bumpus appeared on, I don't think that is the type of matter that you would have somebody appear for you on. Listen, Lil Woody is the star witness in what has been named the biggest case in Georgia history. In this case, there, at least as it relates to him as a witness, there are Fifth Amendment issues, there are immunity issues, and given the nature of the case, his safety could be at risk for testifying. His family's safety could be at risk for testifying. There is just so much going on in this situation, and it's just not the type of thing that you would say, hey, can you can you cover this matter for me this afternoon? Like, it's just not it. And again, I don't want to question Attorney Melnick. I don't know what the other engagement was that he had, but I think this is the one that you appear on and you have somebody else appear at the other one. And I don't know, he might be in trial, he might be, it might have been a family emergency, vacation, whatever it is. I just think that is not the type of thing that you have an attorney specially appear on, because she even said, hey, I was his attorney for one day, right? So she wasn't well versed in the case. So I'm pretty sure she probably hadn't gone through, definitely hadn't gone through all the discovery, because, in a case like this, with all these defendants and how long this case has been going on, there has to be mountains and thousands of pages of discovery, hours of recordings. There's just too much evidence for her to get up to speed to be in a position to handle what it is that she sat in on. And so what she said during that interview is she was like, well, I was just going in to see if he was going to testify or plead the fifth. And I think that's more or less what she said. And I'm sorry, like, this is not just that type of minor issue that you just walk in on with no background of, with no background information or knowledge of the case. And to take it one step further, I just have never, I've been doing this for 15 years. I have never heard of a witness being sworn in the middle of a trial and getting called into chambers for an ex parte hearing. And what ex parte means is, basically one-sided. So, whether it's the defense going in and speaking to the judge ex parte or the DA going in and speaking ex parte, usually when you're having an ex parte matter, it could be to have, I might appear ex parte because, my client is in another detention facility and I need an order to produce, right? So that's not really something that I need to have the DA come in on. So I'm just going in the judge's chambers to have him sign off on an order to produce so I can get that over to, the feds to bring my client over into county custody. That's an example of something that you would do ex parte. This is not. And it's crazy because, Ms. Bumpus had said, like, she had no idea this was going to go down in this way. She said it just happened so fast. And I'm sorry, like, this case is just way too important for way too many people. You have multiple defendants, you have people who I presume are facing life. There is just way too much at stake for this to go down in this way. And one of the things that one of the judge's roles and duties in a trial is to make sure that things are going fairly, right? Because the last thing, whether it's the defense or the DA, the last thing they want to have happen is now we got to do it all over again because, the case goes up on appeal and an appellate court says, well, you got this wrong, you got this wrong, you got this wrong, and the judge should have done this or the judge shouldn't have allowed that. So the judge is supposed to be on his P's and Q's and making sure that everything goes by the book and goes, fairly. And again, not just to avoid the case coming back, but just to make sure that it's a fair trial. Right? That is everyone's constitutional right, regardless of what you're charged with. I don't care if you've killed 30 people, if you are facing trial, you have a right to a fair trial in front of a jury. And that's the judge's obligation. And so I just think it was a bad decision to allow this conference to happen without notifying defense counsel and without allowing them to be present, and for it to have gone down in the way that Miss Bumpus is describing it, that, hey, I had no idea that this was going to happen, and it just happened so fast. Listen, and if that were the situation, I would think that Miss Bumpus, and again, with all due respect to her, I would have said, hey, or if it were me in the situation, I would say, hey, listen, I came here to cover for, my colleague. If this is what's going on, this is an ex parte, situation where we're talking about, his rights and his right to remain silent, pleading the fifth, immunity, all of this going on. Hey, this is not appropriate. We can just set it over for the next day or set it over for the next week. I mean, we got time. Like, I imagine there's other witnesses that the DA could call, because let's just say they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to break up what was going on, or they didn't want to put the case on pause. Well, that can happen, right? In a trial, you can have a witness on the stand, and sometimes, like, if you have scheduling issues, let's just say it's an expert, right? And medical experts, so medical doctors, are just known for having difficult schedules to work around. So let's just say the medical doctor is only available from 2 to 3:30, right? And then you have a witness on the stand who's going to take a whole day. Well, you might say, okay, well, we'll allow, we'll allow John Smith will testify from 9 a.m. to the lunch break. And then we'll have him go from 1:30 to 2. And then, we'll break him up, and then we'll put the expert on the stand, and then he can testify for as long as he needs to, and then he'll be done, and then we'll put John back on the stand. So that is absolutely something that they could have done if that's what they needed to do in order to have Attorney Melnick there so he could be present for this meeting that was going down. I think it is absolutely inappropriate to have somebody who is not the actual counsel of record sitting in on something this serious. And so, you have the judge was there, the DAs were there, Lil Woody's attorney. So Kayla Bumpus was there again, sitting in for Attorney Melnick. You had DA investigators and other, deputy sheriffs were there at this meeting. And you also had the court reporter who was taking down everything. This is a problem. Again, I think that the defense attorneys definitely should have been a part of this meeting. And at a minimum, they should have been made aware. They should have known that this was going on. And this is why when you see that exchange between the judge and Brian Steele, why Mr. Steele was so upset. Like, why didn't we know about this? What is the rationale behind you guys having this secret meeting with a witness who is already under oath and having these conversations? Is completely inappropriate. And I disagree. The DA came out and said, there's nothing wrong with this situation. And of course, she has to say that at this point. She's got to try and, sweep this under the rug or try and, make a bad situation right. Because again, there are matters. And I do agree with her that there are matters for which a party can appear ex parte. But again, to address a witness who has already been sworn in, I just think it's improper. And we were then revealed the contents of this discussion, right? Because in the back and forth between Mr. Steele and Judge Glanville, it wasn't really revealed exactly the substance of what they were talking about. But we then learned by way of court filings and Kayla Bumpus that it turns out that Judge Glanville had apparently asked Mr. Copeland, so Lil Woody, he asked, if he's prepared to testify. And Copeland said, hey, I'm going to plead the fifth, right? So he, and if, if you saw any of this testimony, you could tell he had zero interest in being on that stand and testifying. At some point she asks him, how old are you? He's like, grown. And she then says, what is your age in numbers? And he says, I plead the fifth. and it's kind of crazy because, when it comes to pleading the fifth, I mean, you really can only plead the fifth with respect to questions that could cause you to incriminate yourself. And so there's not really anything incriminating about your age, right? But in this situation, I think just in general, he wanted to just as a blanket matter plead the fifth. And so the interesting thing is the DA was already giving him immunity, right? And so they were having this discussion about his understanding of immunity, right? Because, and it's very easy. Like, we as lawyers, we get in the room, we're talking about all these legal matters that we're used to dealing with every single day. And it's easy to forget that there are lay people in the room who these matters affect their lives, and they may not understand. So they started to explain apparently immunity and engaging his understanding of immunity. And so he ends up being told that, hey, listen, if you don't testify, right? Because he had already expressed, I don't want to testify. And they're like, if you don't testify, I can hold you indefinitely, right? So I can hold you in custody indefinitely if you refuse to testify. And he apparently had been under the understanding that it would be like a limited amount of time that he could be held in contempt and held in jail for refusing to testify. But it turns out that it was indefinitely. And indefinitely means with no end in sight. So you could see how, from a defense standpoint, if we have this witness who's supposed to be the star witness for the prosecution, and they're having this conversation, which could be perceived as a threat, saying, hey, if you don't take the stand, and the next step would be basically saying, like, if you don't take the stand and say what we want you to do or what we want you to say, then, we can hold you in contempt and keep you in custody indefinitely. Then anybody is going to say, okay, well, I'm going to testify, right? Because who wants to just go to jail indefinitely, right? And so just naturally, he's like, I'm going to testify. I don't want to be locked up with no, end date in sight. But the interesting thing that he followed up with is that he said, I'm going to testify, but everything I'm going to say is going to be a lie. And so shortly after that, the meeting ended and the parties end up going into the courtroom. So this conversation happened in the judge's chambers. And I think that's interesting in terms of him saying, and it should have been taken down on the record that, everything he was going to say is a lie. And so, the defense team is going to be able to use that, right? Because, you told prosecutors that everything that you were going to say is a lie. But I think one of the interesting things, and I know that it's been the subject of a lot of memes and videos from a comedic angle based on these things that he's been saying, the way he's been answering questions, his behavior in the courtroom. For me, like I can see the humor in it, but as a criminal defense attorney, I take my profession seriously. And I don't like that, right? I don't like when people disrespect the court, disrespect the process. And the biggest thing probably is disrespecting the jury, right? When you have a group, of 12 people, and sometimes you might have, 16 people, because you in a case like that, you'll definitely have alternates. And I don't know how many alternates they have, but I would imagine, just given the length of the trial and what's at stake, they probably have a significant number of alternates. And so those people are taking time out of their lives. And this is, even more so than in your regular case. Like you might have, in just like your run-of-the-mill case, your trial might go 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and that's still, every day that somebody is away from their family or away from their job or away from whatever it is that they like to do, away from school, and coming in and exercising their civic duty, fulfilling their civic obligation, and sitting down for a trial. You really want to be mindful and respectful of their time. And so, there's no time for antics and silliness and apart from that, just, disrespecting the sanctity of what is supposed to be courtroom proceedings. And so I'm not really for the antics, but that's it went down. That's what he's been doing, and he's been playing with these DAs. And I think it's crazy because, again, that's supposed to be their star witness. And if right out the gate, if you're not even answering your age, right? If the DA is having problems dragging out the age out of their star witness, you can just imagine how clunky this direct examination has gone. And so that can tend to be the experience of defense attorneys, when the prosecution, because the prosecution has the burden of proof, right? So they're putting on all their witnesses, and we end up having to cross-examine witnesses, and cops play games with you, right? Cops are professional witnesses, and they know how to play games and be manipulative and all of that. So we have to deal with these type of things. But usually when the DA is putting on one of their own witnesses, it shouldn't go down like that, right? And that is something that they probably should have taken into consideration in deciding to move forward with this case, and banking on him as a star witness. But anyhow, moving on to just that back and forth between Judge Glanville and Brian Steele. Brian Steele finds out about this meeting somehow. I don't think it's been revealed how he found out. I think what ended up happening is, Kayla Bumpus is at this meeting, obviously, or at this ex-parte hearing. She gets out, and naturally you're going to report back to the attorney that you were appearing for. And she, because from what I understand, not even Attorney Melnick knew that this was going to happen. So she was probably like, hey, you have no idea what just went down or what I just went through. She probably told him about what happened. And then Melnick probably, and again, I don't want to put anything on anybody that didn't do this, but he probably went back to Brian Steele and told him what happened. And in the end, in terms of, that back and forth between Steele and Judge Glanville, Brian Steele did what any criminal defense attorney should do in that situation. When Judge Glanville obviously was pressing him because he wanted to know how Brian Steele got that information, and you could see that Judge Glanville was getting visibly upset and crunching on some food. I don't know what he was eating, but I've never seen that before either. I can tell you that, in my 15 years of being an attorney, a couple other extra years being a DA intern and being in and out of courtrooms, I have never seen a judge, crunching on food on the bench. Like that's insane. It just adds to the circus label that people have put on this trial. But again, I think that Brian Steele did what any attorney should do in that situation. I love the passion. I love the advocacy for his clients. What I didn't like about that interaction, I didn't like how he was talking over the judge. I didn't like how he was cutting off the judge. Listen, when the judge said, and listen, I tell my clients this, because sometimes people want to talk and judges then have to be stern and order you to stop talking. When a judge is talking, you are quiet. That's just the rules. You don't talk over the judge. You don't interrupt the judge. You spoke when you speak when you're asked to, you speak when you're given permission to, but you don't do that. And so, and it's not uncommon to disagree with judges, right? You may think that the judge has made an improper ruling on an objection. You say, objection hearsay, and the judge overrules your objection. Or you say, objection, that, lack of foundation, lack of personal knowledge, and the judge ends up overruling your objection. You don't talk over the judge when you go to the sidebar and he's telling you why he ruled the way that he ruled, or why she ruled the way that she ruled. You need to show deference to the court. And I really think that I appreciate you, Napalm. I'm glad you find it very interesting. I love this stuff. I'm a legal nerd. Always watched Law and Order. That is my favorite legal series when it comes to TV, courtroom drama. The original Law and Order, not SVU, not Criminal Intent or any of those spinoffs. The original Law and Order. I can nerd out on those every time. Who else we got commenting? My four girls. Woo, it sounds like a doozy. It's a fun household. Love, don't, and that is the environment of the Glanville's courtroom. That's interesting. Let's see. Subdue, glad to catch this stream here. I'm not a lawyer or anything, but grew up watching OG Law and Order. Yeah, man, that's the lick right there. But yeah, I definitely think that you can passionately advocate for your client, and still show deference and still show the necessary respect to the man or the woman that's wearing that robe there, that merits respect, regardless of how you personally feel about that judge. But the interesting thing is, I think, Kayla Bumpus actually does find herself now at risk of being found in contempt, because if you heard that back and forth, Judge Glanville was saying, I think I know how you got the information, right? And he referenced a her, I think she or her. And so the logical reasoning ended up being that it would probably be Kayla Bumpus who told Brian Steele. But like I said, it was probably her telling Attorney Melnick, and Melnick going back to Steele and letting him know about this ex parte hearing. And again, I think a couple of things that, Bumpus should have probably said, hey, this is not my case. I don't feel comfortable doing this. Attorney Melnick should be here. He has the right to be here. And, putting that on pause. And same thing with the DA and the judge. Why didn't they put this over to allow Attorney Melnick to be here, in addition to letting all these other defense attorneys know, so that they can be aware of what is going on and be present? And so it's just a mess, right? Because this is a woman who, was doing a favor to Attorney Melnick, and now she finds herself in this thing. And, a lot of times, like, we as defense attorneys, we're covering appearances for other attorneys for free, right? So, if I have a matter in Department 1101 and you have, and I'm downtown and you have a matter in Vista and you need me to cover your downtown matter, then, I'm there for my client and then I'll cover your matter. You just need a new date. Okay, I'll appear on your behalf. I'll let the client know, all right, we're just going to continue your case 30 days out. Reach out to your attorney. He can explain to you what's going on. Boom, boom, boom. And that's that. And so a lot of times, like, we'll do these for free. Sometimes you'll have attorneys that will accept, a couple $100s to make an appearance on your behalf. In fact, there are lawyers who, that's how they make their living, making appearances for other attorneys. The thing is, with that, whether she did it for free or earned a couple $100, she got way more that she ended up signing up for. Because again, now she's facing being held in contempt. She had to hire a lawyer and now she has to defend herself. She has to waste time, going to court and defending herself and all this stuff. So it is just, so it's just an absolute mess. And again, going to, let's see, my 4 girls, you said they wanted to take advantage of Bumpus because she used to work with them at the DA's office. I did hear that she is a former prosecutor. I wasn't aware if that was, at the Fulton County DA's office or where that was, but that's it's still, either way, I think it's unfortunate that she ends up having to lawyer up and defend herself in contempt order to show cause regarding contempt proceedings when she was just, showing up for the one hearing. Bumpus lives in Texas. Okay, cool. So, she traveled all the way out to Georgia for, I don't know how long that flight is, but that's pretty far to travel for this hearing. But, just to give you an example, I just finished a life top trial. So my client was facing life in prison. This case is still kind of going on actively, so I can't speak on the details, but we had a witness. We had a witness who had done something in the case that could have been incriminating to her, right? And so what we did was there was a conference. So this was in like pretrial proceedings. So before we even had the jury come through, what we ended up doing is had a conference. And as defense counsel, we were definitely there. So we were there in chambers. It was me, the DA, my client, the witness, and the witness's attorney. And we had a chance to hear, it was on the record, in the courtroom, that she planned to invoke her Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, right? And her lawyer was there and said, hey, listen, this is what we're doing. I know that the DA wants to call this person as a witness. She's going to invoke her Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. The DA wasn't willing to grant any sort of immunity. And that was that. It took all of 10 minutes. And there's no reason why we wouldn't be there. But for whatever reason, the DA and the judge thought this was appropriate to go down in the way that it did. And so we have what, why, and whose. The problem that has occurred happened because the state tried to distance Woody from legal representation. This was communicated by the attorney that went away during the ex-parte hearing. And so that's even more inappropriate. Like a person in that situation, right, who is alleged to have committed, at least one felony. I don't know, how much he was involved in, but to have communications with this person without his attorney present, that's just all the more shadiness going on in this situation. And these are the type of things, that cause people to lose faith if they already didn't have no faith, right? That it causes people to lose faith in the criminal justice system. When you have prosecutors cutting corners in this way, when you have judges making decisions in this way, and then, rather than to, whether that's apologize or do what you can to make the situation right, you're then attacking the lawyer for standing up for himself and standing up for his client in light of what he presumes or what he perceives to be a complete and total miscarriage of justice. It's just crazy. It just really is crazy. And so I just think if you're doing things above board, then you have defense counsel present. It's one thing, yeah, they had the court reporter there, and I guess that's better than nothing, right? That's better than having a conference with no court reporter present. But I don't think that's enough. That's not enough in this situation. Defense counsel should have been notified and they should have been present. Alejandro says not all attorneys uphold the level of dedication to their clients and professional conduct as you do, Mr. Kersey. Thank you so much for that comment. Yes, that's just something I've always prided myself on, being a professional and really respecting the courtroom, respecting opposing counsel. If you ask any DA that I've worked with, they'll probably tell you that I'm one of the most respectful defense attorneys that they've ever gone up against. But at the same time, I'm thorough. I am diligent, I am passionate, I am methodical, and I will rip apart a witness on cross-examination, but I will do it very respectfully. I will never disrespect a witness, because I just don't believe in doing so. That's just outside of my character. And so, yeah, we all have different styles. And so, yeah, what, why, and whose. He says exactly what I was trying to get at. Well said. Thank you. It's what I do for a living. I better be able to speak on it intelligently, right? But yeah, man, many people have called this trial a circus, and it's just, at this point, is really hard to disagree. There just have been so many crazy things that have gone on, and this is yet another one. It sounds like the order to show cause hearing is coming up, I think, this week. I think it's scheduled for July 5th. So right after the holiday, we'll find out who, if anyone, is ultimately found in contempt over this, and if there will be a jail sentence imposed. I know, Judge Glanville was very upset in his interaction with Brian Steele. So we'll see. This it's been an interesting one, and we'll see what goes down. But that's going to be it for this one. I really wanted to get out and, like I said, be more consistent with the live streams. As always, if you have questions, you can leave them for me. I try and get back to all of them as soon as I can. It gets a little hard doing the, having a day-to-day practice of law and helping my clients, but I do try and be a resource. So, if you've rocked with me thus far, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you supporting. If you can share, let people know next time, I'd appreciate that too. So enjoy your weekend. It's a beautiful weekend out. The sun is out. It's a good day. So be blessed. We'll see you next time. I'm out. Peace.